Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and these are the 2026 iPads. Apple typically changes these throughout the year, but this is what's currently available, and I wanted to help you decide which would be best for you. From left to right, we have the base iPad or iPad A16, then we have the iPad mini A17 Pro, iPad Air M4, and iPad Pro M5. We do have different sizes, whether that's the iPad Pro and the iPad Air. They're both available in 11 and 13-inch variants. But right here we have the 11-inch and then the 13-inch variant of the iPad Pro. When it comes to price, we start at $349 with the starting price of the iPad, the base one, all the way up to $999 with the base price of the iPad Pro. You can go much more expensive depending on options though. All of them start at 128 gigs of storage with the exception of the iPad Pro that starts at 256. With the overall design, the base iPad and the iPad Air are fairly similar, but there are some differences to talk about. So you'll see right away that we have a lot of reflections. That's because the base iPad does not offer any anti-reflectivity coating. All of the rest of them have anti-reflective coatings where the base iPad does not. Also, the base iPad has sort of a display that's not laminated, but is rather just a piece of glass and then a display underneath. Where the iPad Air, for example, and the others are laminated, which means the glass is attached directly to the actual display underneath. So you'll see there's not really a gap there, where again, if we take a look at the base iPad, you'll see that gap there. That's not much of an issue. It does make it easier to repair technically, having this gap, but again, it makes for a more reflective screen, and it's just not as nice overall. The other thing is with the base iPad, it only supports sRGB color with True Tone though, and goes up to 500 nits. All of them go up to 500 nits with the exception of the iPad Pro, which goes up to 1000 nits with regular brightness and then up to 1600 nits with HDR content. It's a much brighter OLED display, where these, the iPad, iPad mini, and iPad Air are all LCD displays. Another difference with the display is with the M5 iPad Pro and some of the earlier iPad Pros, we have the nano texture option if you select 1TB or 2TB of storage. It helps with anti-reflectivity, helps with smudges, and you can see it here. So compared with the base iPad, for example, you can see the reflectivity here. If I turn the display off, just tilt it, you can see how much less reflective it is. It's a really great technology, and it's gotten better over time so that it really doesn't affect the display as much as it used to. So it keeps things nice and crisp, but it's definitely a huge difference if I turn all of these off, where you can see the reflectivity across all of them. So definitely a plus there with the anti-reflectivity. And of course, all of them support Apple Pencil. So let's turn them all back on here. We'll unlock. And then of course we need Face ID to unlock this one. We'll talk about that in a moment. Now with these displays, of course, we have support for Apple Pencil. However, on the base iPad, it's a little bit different. It supports the first generation Apple Pencil along with the new USB-C Apple Pencil. You can tell that as it slides open and has USB-C, but all of the others do not support the first generation Apple Pencil, but rather the USB-C version, as well as Apple Pencil Pro, which has more sensitivity, has haptic feedback, and more sort of features to go along with it. And also, if you like this nano texture display like I do, and you love to draw on your iPad, today's sponsor Paperlike is a great addition to your iPad to give you not only a nano texture-like feature, but also feeling like paper while drawing. The latest Paperlike 3 is less than 0.095 thin. It meets Apple's design guidelines and ensures your Apple Pencil remains precise. It has a new butterfly application system, making it a no-stress, dust-free application, so let's go ahead and try it out and get it installed. Now that the Paperlike 3 screen protector is installed, that has to be one of the easiest to install screen protectors without leaving dust underneath or air bubbles that you can't easily remove. Now let's go ahead and turn it on, and this has a texture similar to paper thanks to its nanodot surface technology. The texture is very paper-like, so just touching it like this, or maybe using your Apple Pencil in a note. So if we bring in the Apple Pencil, I can write out Zollotech, and it feels just like writing on paper. So take a listen. So not only is the texture similar to paper, but it also keeps your Apple Pencil tip from wearing out thanks to years of fine tuning. I'll leave a link in the description below so you can check it out for yourself. Now the overall design is slightly different other than the obvious size differences. With the base iPad, the iPad mini, and the iPad Air, we have Touch ID. Simply place your finger on it and it unlocks like we've had for many years. We also have our volume buttons on the side, and then we have speaker ports. However, we only have 2 speakers in the iPad mini and iPad Air. The iPad Pro actually has 4, and I'll show you that in a moment. On the bottom, we have USB-C, but on the iPad, the base iPad, the USB-C port is limited to 500 megabytes per second. The iPad mini and iPad Air also have Touch ID, but we actually have a slightly different layout on the iPad mini where the volume buttons are on the top. We have similar venting or speaker holes here, or ports, as well as Touch ID, but we have faster USB-C on the Mini and the Air. We have up to 10 gigabits per second, so much faster there. And then on the iPad Pro, well, the Air also has its volume buttons on the side here, similar to the base iPad. On the iPad Pro, it's a different story here. So we have 4 different speaker ports, and we have 4 different speakers. We also have 4 microphones, where on the other devices, we just have 2 microphones. So landscape stereo speakers and 2 microphones on everything else. On the iPad Pro, 4 studio quality mics and 4 speaker audio. We also have Face ID, so simply tap the display, swipe up, and it unlocks like your iPhone. It's also incredibly thin compared to any other Apple device, and if I bring in the iPhone Air here side by side, so the iPad Pro compared to the iPad Air, if we don't include the camera bump, they're very similar as far as the overall thickness, but we have just 5.3 millimeters thin here. We also have a very rigid frame, so if I try and flex it, it doesn't really move, and you'll see some pogo pin adapters on the back. We have cellular and Wi-Fi across all of them. But let's go ahead and unlock this. And the other thing here, of course, is we have a bunch of cameras. Now, I'm not going to talk a whole lot about the cameras as they are slightly different, but very similar. So if we take a look at the back here, we'll just flip all of these over. You'll see with the iPad Pro and the iPad Air, of course, we have those pogo pin adapters, but the cameras are very similar across the base, iPad mini, and the iPad Air. With the iPad Pro, we do have a slightly different camera array where we have a LiDAR sensor as well that can allow us to scan different things. So maybe we want to use it for 3D modeling. We can create a point map with it and then of course use it for modeling as well, and it's a little bit more advanced. iPad Pro can also record in ProRes video if you want to do that. But with the front-facing cameras, again, they're very similar, but the Pro has a true depth camera thanks to the Face ID sensor. So it will be a little bit better as far as that goes. We have center stage and those sorts of features. Again, if we unlock here, and we have center stage, of course, but many people don't use those unless you're in a conference call. So maybe you want to use that. You also have a landscape-based camera on the iPad Pro where the sensors are here on the right, same as the Air. But on the iPad Pro, we also have a faster USB-C port or Thunderbolt port, allowing up to 40 gigabytes per second. That allows you to connect it to the new Studio Display XDR and run it at 120 Hertz, as this display is the only one with 120 Hertz ProMotion. So it's super smooth all the time on the iPad Pro, and just a great experience. Now we'll talk about performance in a moment, but let's talk about the chips that we have and the RAM that we have in all of them. The base iPad has an A16 with 6 gigabytes of RAM and Wi-Fi 6. The iPad mini has an A17 Pro with 8 gigabytes of RAM and Wi-Fi 6E. The iPad Air has an M4 CPU, 12 gigabytes of RAM and Wi-Fi 7, and the iPad Pro, depending on configuration, has the M5 CPU with 12 or 16 gigabytes of RAM on the 1 or 2 terabyte models. This is a 1 terabyte model, and it also has Wi-Fi 7. All of them have cellular options as well, and as far as the overall battery life, it's all the same. Apple basically says 10 hours of battery life no matter which device you're actually using. That can vary from device to device, but for the most part, it's the same as it's sort of matched to each display. Now, what that means for overall speed with those processors and things, I wanted to show you a couple tests. One way to do that is to show you Geekbench, which just gives you sort of a visual representation or a score as to what each processor can do. So we'll go into Geekbench on each one of them, and let's go here, and then we'll run it. Benchmarks completed on all the device, and this gives you sort of a general picture of what the processor is capable of. From the lowest with 6,377 for multi-core all the way up to 16,646 for multi-core. So it's great that we have all of this power, but what does that mean for overall usability? Well, it really depends on what you do, because not much depending on what you actually do from day to day. For example, Apple Intelligence is supported on all the devices except the base iPad. Now, we may get a new one, maybe in a few days or a few weeks, or maybe later this year. But if we press and hold to activate Siri, we'll turn it on here for now, just so you can see. And again, you've got the traditional Siri icon that shows up. And on all the others, you have Apple Intelligence, and you can tell that by lighting up Siri on the outside edge. Now, we do expect big changes with Siri with iOS 27 and iPadOS 27, and maybe that's out by the time you're watching this video. But so far, there's not a huge difference in overall usability of Siri, but there are Apple Intelligence features with writing and things like that. But the base iPad with the A16 processor does not get those due to its lack of RAM. So 6 gigabytes of RAM here, you need a base of 8 gigabytes for that. As far as the other usability, well, you get all of the same features for the most part as far as using iPadOS. So if we go into settings, for example, you'll see here, if we go into multitasking, we can even use Stage Manager. We can use windowed apps, even on the iPad mini. So if we go into Safari, for example, we'll load Apple. It loads Apple like this. We'll rotate it, we can shrink it down, maybe we'll open the App Store here, and now we've got the same multi-windowing here that goes on with any of these devices. So you can do similar things with slide over here and everything else, or split view rather, with slide over and everything else. So maybe we want slide over, we can enter slide over. This goes off to the side. So again, we've got that on the mini and the base iPad as well. So the base iPad gets all of the same sort of operational similarities. So if we go into settings, multitasking and gestures, windowed apps, again, you've got the same thing. So again, if we go here, we'll go to Apple, we can shrink this down. Maybe we'll go into weather, shrink that down. Go into slide over, we can do that as well. So it's got all of the exact same features as far as the OS for the most part. The differences really come into when you are doing something, maybe editing video or connecting it to an external display. The bigger difference will come into play when you're doing more intensive tasks. So maybe you're editing video. We'll go into Final Cut Pro here. It loads, and maybe we've got iPhone 17 Pro Max 60 days later. We'll go into edit here, and then you have your timeline. Or maybe we'll go back to one I did before, a Porsche oil change video that I've never released, but you can see it here where we have the full timeline, and you can scrub through this. So it works very fast and exports very fast. You can use LumaFusion, you can use DaVinci Resolve, and while technically those are available on older devices or less powerful devices, you still have similar experiences. If we go into the App Store, you'll see you still have the option for Final Cut Pro. If you have Apple Creator Studio, you can use that along with Pixelmator Pro and all of those particular apps, and they'll work just fine on here. They just won't be as fast. So that's really the difference in the processor. We have so much power with the M4 and M5 iPad Air and iPad Pro that it's really not missed that much on this device. So we're going to have a similar experience, but just slower exports and maybe not handling as an intensive process, as well as maybe a bigger monitor that can support this. But for the most part, you'll have the similar experience. So you'll see they're installing. I'll show you it in a moment. So now I've sent the project over from the iPad Pro to the iPad or the base iPad. And if we go to edit, you'll see we have the full project here. So I can sort of swipe through, edit everything I want, swipe through the timeline here the same exact way. Now export times may vary, but you can still edit this footage, and it's 4K 60 footage taken directly off an iPhone. If you want to maybe bring this in here, put it into the timeline, you can do that. And then of course you'll see what you have here, and you can fully edit this without an issue. So the base iPad is a very capable device. Now maybe you want to use your iPad more for gaming or activities and just consuming content. If we go over maybe into Minecraft, let's see how quickly we can load that on all these devices. So I'll open it here, here, and here, and let's just start a world or a game and see how quickly it loads. So again, we'll go into play, and now let's go ahead and select and see how quickly it actually creates the world. And this is where you might see a difference in the processors. You might not, depending on what you're doing. And so they're finishing in the order you would expect based off the overall processor speed. And so, of course, the iPad Pro is the fastest by far and is the smoothest because it's got 120 Hertz ProMotion. The base iPad's going to be a little bit slower, of course, and that's just because the processor's slower and it has less RAM. But it gives you an idea of what's going on here. All of them are playable, and it shows the speed difference. So while it's fully capable and fully playable, you are going to see a little bit of a speed difference there. Of course, with the Pro having the M5 in it, and we have the M4, again, both from Macs, they're going to be much, much faster. Now, Apple tends to keep iPads updated for many years, so I wouldn't be concerned on any of these for that. Of course, the base iPad would probably be the first to not get updates, but I would expect at least 5 to 7 years of support without any issues whatsoever. You may see some slowdowns from time to time, but of course the Pro models tend to stay very fast for a very long time. As far as accessories, well, I did mention the Apple Pencils before, and the Apple Pencil will actually charge and magnetically stick to the iPads on the iPad mini, the Pro, and the Air. So we have a little spot here where it will magnetically charge it and hold on to it, but the base iPad does not have this because there is no iPad Pro support. So we don't have the little area where it will stick on there, but you can charge it with USB-C and use it the exact same way with no issues. And with the Apple Pencil with USB-C on the base iPad, you can plug it in like this. It will recognize the Apple Pencil. This will charge it. And then with the base Apple Pencil, you'll use USB-C to Lightning and pair it that way. But basically, you can use either or. You can use it plugged in so you can control it with the pencil, or of course use it wirelessly once it's charged. Now with the iPads, just like we have a difference with support with Apple Pencil, we also have some different accessories. The accessories from Apple for the base iPad go all the way up to a keyboard case. So what we have here is the base iPad supports the Magic Keyboard Folio. So it attaches like this. So it attaches via those pins on the side magnetically. And then also we have a back piece that's a cover as well. But this is quite expensive. But we do have the option to have a stand built in. Then we can open it up, tilt it down. Then once we unlock it, let's do that. So we'll unlock it here, swipe up, and then we can use this with a mouse and control the iPad that way. So again, we can use the mouse, the keyboard, but it is not a backlit keyboard. So if I turn the lights off briefly, you'll see there's no backlight. There's no option for a backlight for the keyboard. You don't have that on this device. With the iPad mini, we don't have a keyboard option, but it does support Bluetooth keyboards. We have your typical case that you can get from Apple. That's sort of the Folio case, and there's many third-party cases available as well. So we do have that Apple Pencil support, but we have the case. Once we open it, it will sort of wake it up, close it, it will shut it off. And then of course you can use it as a stand on the back. So that's something you have available, again, with USB-C keyboards. With the iPad Air, we also have a Magic Keyboard option, or some of those Folios. Let me show you that on the 13-inch. Now here's the iPad Air 13-inch with the Magic Keyboard, and this is an accessory you can buy for it, which is fairly expensive at about $300 or $320, but it does have a trackpad, it has a rubberized design, and it can control things such as volume and other things. However, one thing it does not have is a backlit keyboard. This one is not backlit. The only backlit keyboard with the Magic Keyboard is for iPad Pro. So if we lock this, let's take a look at the iPad Pro. Here we have the iPad Pro Magic Keyboard, which is around $350 depending on size, but this is a metal design. We also have a port here, which we also have on the iPad Air model as well, but we do have a backlit keyboard. So let's go ahead and place this here. We'll place the iPad on here, and then if we turn off the lights, I'll show you that it's backlit. So let's do that. We'll close it, reopen it, and you'll see that the keyboard is now backlit. So this works great. You can control the brightness in your control center if you want to make it brighter or more dim, but you have that backlit keyboard where you don't get this on the other iPad models as an option. Now it automatically turned itself off since it recognized there's light and we don't need it for the keyboard, and it saves some power. So there's some great accessories here, again with the different Apple Pencils, Apple Pencil Pro, and those vary from device to device, but pretty much you can get a nice keyboard and keyboard case to go along with any of the iPads. Now, as far as which iPad would be right for you, well, based on my recommendations, if you've never had an iPad before, the base iPad is a great one. Maybe you want one for your family or just to try it out. You're not really sure about iPad or if you'd regularly use it. The $349 starting price, which you can often find discounts on as well at different retailers, is a great place to start. And then if you like it a lot and you want a little bit more power or maybe the anti-reflective display or things like that, then you could jump up to the next model. When it comes to the mini, there's quite a few people that really love the iPad mini. I find that it's too small for me, but many people like it, especially if you want maybe a small notebook device that you could use for notes while speaking in front of people, or you just want something that's a little bit similar to an iPhone, but a little bit larger. This could be right for you. It has a lot of power. It also has all of the same features in a smaller package. So this could be right for you and might be the size of the upcoming iPhone Fold. When it comes to the iPad Air, I recommend this for someone that would maybe want an iPad Pro but doesn't want the cost of the iPad Pro, and you don't care about ProMotion and you don't care about an OLED display. Other than that, it has almost everything minus the speakers, but the experience is very similar. So you get a little bit less speed, but it's super fast overall, whether that's playing games, editing in Final Cut Pro, taking photos, using it for FaceTime. Any of those things are going to be super fast and usable on the iPad Air. The iPad Pro, though, is what I recommend for those that want the ultimate iPad. You can connect it to a studio display, run it 120 Hz, everything's super fluid and fast, the display looks incredible, the speakers sound incredible, and it has fast transfer speeds. This could fully replace a MacBook without any issues, especially if you're used to the touch interface. For example, like I mentioned before, with Final Cut Pro, so if we go into Final Cut here, it's just super fast. You've got this beautiful display that's a reference display you could use here to edit video, export video, upload them to YouTube, or use this for anything else. This could fully replace your regular MacBook or a different computer if you don't care about having that computer experience. So this is something I recommend for those that want the ultimate experience, and typically you don't need to upgrade these every year. You could buy one now, use it for maybe 3 years, and if you look maybe for something a little bit more speed, a little bit more storage, then you could upgrade. Most of these are a great option. However, I would recommend that maybe you step up to the next storage option just to sort of future-proof it. With the base iPad and the others starting at 128 gigabytes, I would probably bump that to at least 256 just to make sure you have it. But you can use external storage with them via USB-C. But either way, I would recommend just bumping that up a little bit to have that extra storage, especially if you're planning to edit video. And so those are all the iPads this year for 2026. Apple could update the iPad mini to an OLED display later. They could bump up the processor, but the overall experience remains the same across all of them. There's great experiences at varying price levels for each one of them. So hopefully that helped you decide which would be best for you. Let me know what you're using in the comments below. And of course, I'll link this wallpaper in the description like I normally do. If you haven't subscribed already though, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.